Welcome to the Northeast Divide podcast. I'm your host, John Lane. I'm joined by Anth as always, and we're here to talk about the two largest clubs in the Northeast, Newcastle United and Sunderland. We are approaching the end of the season, so it'll be really interesting to kind of see how that all peters out. What I would say, though, is we are planning to provide you plenty of content throughout the summer, approaching next season as well. So there is something to look forward to, Anth, because let's be honest, the season's been done for a while for yourselves. And speaking of that, Watford at last weekend, I mean, what was your thoughts on the game? Did you see much of it? How did it go?
Yeah, not great again, is it? Not great. The season's petered out, hasn't it? And we knew it was inevitable. But again, I'm a bit concerned at the lack of not so much effort, but the lack of quality that's starting to show towards the end of the season. And there's a lot of tired legs out there, as there always is. But I mean, Watford have been pretty similar to us this season. I think they've underachieved. I suppose based on last season, some supporters would say we've underachieved. But just looking at the stats with regards to Watford Sunderland last week, I mean they had 46% possession. We had 54. They had 10 shots, 3 on target. We had 11, 6 on target. Now therein lies the problem. Not so much creating the chances because we're still doing that to a certain extent. It's more putting them away. And I was just looking at some stats from teams above us who've got in sort of top of the table positions and could be up for automatic promotion. Your Ipswich, for example, and we talk about Kiefer Moore. Now,
Yep.
the whole thing with regards to Sunderland, the model, the project, with regards to the age, the restrictions, we could have really done with him. I mean, he scored 7 goals and he's got 1 assist, and I think he's been brilliant for them. He's strong, he's powerful, he's good on the ball, he holds it up well, and we haven't got that. And then I look at Broadhead, one that got away. He wanted to go to Ipswich. There was nothing we could do. We did offer him a deal apparently. I don't know what kind of ambition we promised or showed, but he's obviously chose Ipswich, and to his credit, he's chose the right team this season. But 13 goals and 3 assists, and that is what we have missed badly.
Yeah, I think you've needed, haven't you? We've said this since we started the podcast, really, that you needed like a number 9, but I think what you also need like a target man, really, because you didn't really have that. But I think the other thing you need is just a bit of experience in that squad. And look, if you haven't got a little bit of experience in there, yes, you've got a lot of young potential talent, and I think this is, I know this is the nature of this pod. You end up talking about Newcastle again, but when we think about kind of some of the calls for some members of that squad to go, like people are like, oh well, Trippier's the wrong side of 30, Wilson's the wrong side of 30, but they're leaders, and if you just take all your leaders out, then what do you do? I mean, if we look at our leadership group at the minute, it's we've got 5 players in there, right? So it's Matt Ritchie, Callum Wilson, Kieran Trippier, Jamal Lascelles, and Dan Burn. That's our leadership group. Now, there's a lot of arguments to say that 4 of those are touted to potentially go because either it's a good time to sell them from a financial fair play, PSR kind of opinion. But you can't just take that that character and that dynamic out because you're going to get a few quid, and I think that's where. Yes, Sunderland have had to make some really difficult decisions about the kind of players that they sell, but what they haven't done is thought about, right, well, actually, how can we build some experience in there? But I suppose, look, I'm assuming new manager's going to be in the next month or so, and then they hopefully will be in a position where, the ownership group will back them for yourselves, I suppose, and to do that. You were talking about goals being created and that kind of thing in terms of how you are doing generally on that front, and not scoring the goals that you're creating. I thought I'd have a quick look at XG, or everyone's favorite stat. So obviously, so XG, for those that don't know, it's basically some sort of algorithm they've put together to give you an idea of kind of the quality of the chances that you create. Now, what I find really interesting for Sunderland is that they're actually on average they've got the 5th best XG in the league, but they've actually outscored their oh no, sorry, they've underscored their XG by 0.35 per game. So basically, what I kind of work from that is that you're only scoring 2/3 of the goals that you should be, based on the quality of the chances that you're creating. So I think that illustrates your point, not just the eye test that you've had, Anth, but actually that illustrates the point through the pure stats that are there over the course of 45 out of 46 games, not clinical enough. Yeah.
Do you know, I've looked at the stats, not to that extent. So thanks for that stat, though. You always come
It's
up with the
amazing
goods.
what a quick Google can do.
You always come up with the goods, John. But when I look at the goals that we've scored 52 and conceded 52.
Yeah.
So that just about sums it up, doesn't it? And also without Jack Clark's goals, 15 goals is it, and 4 assists. You've got Job with 7 goals, 1 assist. You've got then you're down to strikers. You've got Rusin with 2 goals and 1 assist. You've got Dak with, I don't know if he's classed as a forward or what he's classed as, but 1 goal and 1 assist. You've got Burstow, 1 goal and 1 assist, and then the likes of Semedo, Louis Samir, Hamir Semedo, no goals and no assists, and that just again sums up where we're at, and investment is much needed for next season. We are in desperate need of a championship proven striker. There's a young lad's name been bandied around at the moment from West Ham, and apparently there's a few clubs in for him. He's 18, 19. He's been on the first team sort of fringes and what have you, but again, unproven at that level. So we really need to do our research, and we really need to get them in before pre-season.
You do. I think again, will the model allow that? We had this under our previous owner where they're looking and going, well, we could sign this player, but if we wait like a couple of weeks, then we're going to save like this much on wages. But the thing is, and I think if I remember correctly, the summer that we signed Callum Wilson, I think we only signed him like a week or two before the first game of the season. And I'm thinking if you want to get these players hitting the ground running and understanding the system and whatever else. Now I know it was Steve Bruce, so there was no system. It was, give the ball to Maxi and hope for the best. But that's what sensible clubs will do. They will bring players in early, and ultimately it's about the investment and where you want to finish. And look, Kieran Maguire said it to me, a few weeks ago about Sunderland. He said, they just need one good season. One good season gets you in the Premier League, and then it's about having another good season to stay there, and then it gets easier to stay there because the gap builds between you and the other clubs, and so on and so forth. So, look, it's not impossible, but yeah, I can't. To quote Alan Hansen, you're not going to win that league with kids.
Yep.
Like you're not, like you need some experience in there. I think you've got some really young, talented players. But yeah, you're right. You desperately need to hold a tight of Jack Clark, and I think you probably will. We've had this conversation a couple of times on here. I think you will, but we will see. We played Sheffield United. Interesting game. Interesting game to watch. So we went 1-0 down after about 10 minutes. And Sheffield United, all credit to them, could have been 2 or 3-0 up. Alexander Isak saves us a brilliant chance, great ball by Jacob Murphy, fantastic finish by Isak, make it 1-1. And I think we got to half time, and I think the second half turned it on, and we kind of performed the way that Newcastle can perform, created lots of chances, scored lots of goals, and kind of going back to that XG conversation. Our XG this season's 1.52, but goals that we've scored per game is 2.18. So we're outscoring our XG by 2/3. And I don't know if you've seen, Anth, but we're actually we've broken the record, or we've equaled the record of Newcastle's highest goal scoring achievement in the Premier League, and we are on
Yay.
track. Yeah, it's a really exciting one for you, but we're also on track to beat the 42 game one that Keegan's team set in, I think 93, 94, if we continue to score at the
Wow,
same kind of
that's
rate. So, you know, and it's funny, like pre-season, I said the one thing we need to do is score more goals. Well, Eddie Howe heard the memo, and he delivered that. So thanks for listening to whichever podcast I said that on, Eddie. I really appreciate that. But I think it's just really nice. Again, not trying to rub this in. It's really nice to be this stage of the season and still have something like that you want to play for. So we're not kind of playing to try and stay in the division. We're trying to get into Europe, and you know, we're still going to have to do well to do that. But we're absolutely, you know, I think we're probably favourites when you look at, you know, between us, Man United, and Chelsea. We're probably favourites to do that now.
I agree. Do you know what? In all seriousness, that's no mean feat. That's you know, I think is it Eddie Howe's 100th game in charge as well this weekend,
100th Premier League
and
game in
100th
charge.
Premier League game in charge.
Yeah.
Yes, just you can get that in as well. And so all credit, all credit. I mean, we've discussed this before. I know he had his critics when he was going through a rough patch at whatever stage of the season that was. Injury list was mounting up. All credit to him. All credit to him. And unlucky Sheffield United, but that's when the quality tells, isn't it? They didn't take the chances. He's upped your game. The quality told in the end, and you got the result, and it was a good result. And you know, if we want to be anywhere near challenging next season for just a playoff place, we need that firepower. We need that firepower. So I've got no idea which manager's going to come in. Obviously, Will Still's left Reims now, hasn't he? And the room mill is, I mean, West Ham is
Yeah.
still being courted as such and what have you, but I'm not sure if he'd be ready for the Premiership. So I don't even know if he'd be ready for the Championship. It's a bit of a gamble, and you know, but he speaks, obviously he speaks different languages. We've got a big French contingent in our club, and he's young, and I think he's a very intelligent manager. So. And compared to some of the names being bandied around, I mean, I've made a list, an extensive list here. I mean, Will Still sounds like the creme de la creme because you've got, believe it or not, I'm gobsmacked. Sam Allardyce is in there.
Again, Big
Yeah,
Sam. Hey,
again,
you didn't do badly for you last time.
true that. Neil Lennon. I mean, Alex Ray. I think you know could be another one worth a punt possibly. Neil Warnock, Steve Bruce. And you know, there's some Alex Neil, Scott Parker's in there. There's actually some good names. Roy Keane, that's gone now.
Fantasy,
And
innit?
yeah, so but the Will Still thing, the sticking point now is the alleged 4 to 5 million euros pounds compensation. But now that's out of the way. Who knows? I just hope, nay, pray that we've got someone lined up.
Well, that was the heavy whispers, wasn't it? That the situation with Will Still was that he why is my mind gone back? Yeah, is that basically that's who Sunderland wanted. That's who they wanted originally, and then they could basically it was a compensation issue, and Sunderland weren't prepared to pay the compensation for him. Now, as you say, if that's gone away, then all of a sudden it does open that door. And look, I think from what I understand of him, I haven't followed his career massively closely, but I think he probably is a really good fit for you. And I think if you look at kind of at the model, you're after a young, progressive coach. You need a coach that's going to improve your players. And look, we've got that. I'm very lucky to have that. We've got someone who, if I think about the players that are still starting for Newcastle now, Jacob Murphy, Emil Kraft, you know, these are players that were playing there under Bruce, Lascelles, Cher. I could sit here and list them all day, even Martin Dubravka, Eddie Howe's improved. Like, I can't think of a player. I think the only player maybe you could argue didn't really improve on him was Alan Saint-Maximin, and he moved on. The rest, I think everybody got better, whereas under Bruce, everyone regressed. And I think, that's the biggest argument I can give. If you're thinking, I'm not sure if I should be spending money on this coach, the question is that coach going to improve the squad that you've got? Because of the way that Eddie Howe's improved that squad, we're likely to finish Europe 2 seasons in a row. And there's still a vast amount of that original squad still there. For me, that that tells you everything. You know, we haven't done what Chelsea did in 2003 and totally overhauled the squad. You know, in a very short period of time, or even Man City probably didn't do it to the same extent. But you know, I think that's the bit I look at. I just think that's the genius. Like when you improve some of those players, Joe Linton, like he turned from mouse to mountain, didn't he?
What transformation! I mean, he showed that at the Stadium Light, didn't he? He bossed it. So to have a manager who can do that, it's a very well, it's a rare commodity, and it's a very valuable commodity. So yeah, whoever comes to Sunderland's got a big job on the hands. There's no mistake about that. I mean, the potential's there. Obviously, you can go on all day about the facilities, the ground, etc. Stadium, sorry. You know, everything's there. But again, is it going to hinder the manager coming in? This model which needs tweaking. You've said it before. You can see from the outside looking in, it needs tweaking because it hasn't been successful. Well, it's been a little bit successful with regards to we've bought unproven players. They've played really well. They've probably increased in value, but it's shown this season. It's petered out. The experience hasn't been there. Like you said, you've got the core players there who are experienced. Who even your Matt Ritchie, who's not getting on the pitch. I mean, have him in the dressing room, and the influence he has motivating younger players. I think we have missed that. I mean, Corey Evans is back now, and you've got the likes of Dan Ballard and what have you, who I'm sure have got a big voice in the dressing room. But we really need to show a bit more nous next season, and yeah, hopefully we will.
Yeah, I think look, and I think just going on to that, it's interesting how I think our model was very similar under a Mike Ashley umbrella. It was very much bringing in unproven players, not always young, but always unproven. But there was a period of time where you can only sign a player if they're under the age of 25. And I think over time, the elements of that started to relax because it's so important to stay in the Premier League. You realise actually, no, we are going to need some experienced heads, and we are going to have to make sure that we do what we can to stay safe. But that is that's history, thankfully, and we're in a much better place now. So let's talk about the future and what could happen. So reports this week that from Luke Edwards, the Telegraph, who's basically said that the feasibility studies completed on the future of Newcastle United Stadium and what could happen there. And the preference is that Newcastle United want to stay at St James's Park and they want to extend it to around about 60,000 or potentially slightly more. What's your thoughts hearing this as an opposition fan, Anth? Surprised? Are you surprised that Newcastle haven't gone for the new stadium model necessarily, or do we think this is almost like a stepping stone towards that point?
Do you know, I get location wise, St James's Park is perfect. It's fantastic location wise, and I've been in and around the ground when the games are on, and I'll not say experienced, but I've been caught amongst the Newcastle fans, caught amongst them, I somewhat
Very quietly.
very quietly, mute in fact, and you can sense it before the match has even kicked off. The atmosphere building, it's a great atmosphere. To be fair, it's a great atmosphere, and I've been reading up on it with regards to them wanting to extend the leasehold on the ground, and I think the club has a lease of 70 years to run, but obviously wants more. Is that true with regards to
Yeah,
any potential investment? They want more, sort of, a bigger lease, a longer lease anyway, which is understandable.
I think that's fascinating
Mm.
that that's being talked about because I think look, we talked. I don't know if I can't remember if we talked about this earlier, but basically, there's some restraints around the ground. So anybody who knows the area in and around St James's Park, you got Lees's Terrace, which is there's listed buildings, which is right behind the East Stand. So basically, the East Stand, which if when the players walk out, that's the stand you can see straight ahead of you. That's that stand you can't really build on that feet like that seems like it's going to be a difficult challenge. But what I would say is that none of the details of this feasibility study have been released. So we don't know. And there's a lots of, I mean, I was at a talk on Friday, Asper's, guy called Mark Douglas, who works for the newspaper. He was talking about how so many developers are saying they want to work with St James's Park. They want to be they find St James's Park a fascinating project because of the challenges it's got, but also because of the history and the fact that if you can keep that stadium alive and renew it and be able to do what you need to do with it in order for it to be one of these, big top European clubs, which is what, the Public Investment Fund have been very honest about. They were on the Amazon documentary. We want to be number one. And he said, that's where they want the direction of travel to be. So the fact that they're talking about extending the leasehold from a 70-year lease to look as longer term as possible, I think there's two schools of thought on this. It's either it's incredibly bold and impressive if they're going to be able to renovate St James's Park to the extent they're going to need to in order to deliver what they want to deliver. The other side of it is there's a cynical point of view, which is, if the council don't make it easy for us to extend the leasehold on that, we're going to have to move to a new stadium, and then we can just build it from scratch, and that'll be more economically viable, shall we say? Because why would you spend hundreds of millions extending a ground to only then build a new stadium a little bit later? I mean, what's your take on that? What's your thoughts?
Do you know, it's a question of when we talked about Roker Park. I mean, Roker Park towards the end was dilapidated, falling apart. You know, you do sort of see things through rose-tinted spectacles, and you want to romanticize the Roker Roar, etc., which was phenomenal. The atmosphere was amazing. It was chuff and freezing though, regardless of whether or not what season it was, be it winter, spring, summer, whatever. But if I was a Newcastle United supporter, my heart would say, please keep St James's Park. Please see what we can do with it. I know, obviously, with the city centre conservation area, etc., and you mentioned there with regards to is a grade one listed buildings behind the east stand. I've done my research. Can you tell?
You have.
With
Yeah.
regard, I have. So and I've been in the ground. I've been in the ground. Not even for Sunderland matches. So I think location-wise, it's fantastic. But then it's not as if you're Manchester United and you've got a plot of land right next door to Old Trafford, because let's be honest, Old Trafford's now it looks like a dinosaur compared to other stadiums grounds. So you haven't got that. They haven't got that sort of luxury. Where do you go? Is there anything being sort of marked out for a potential build or a move on? It's a lot to take on board, and it's a lot to discuss, isn't it? So, and obviously you're hosting games in the 2028 Euros as well, aren't you? So there's that to sort of work towards with regards to increasing capacity. So there's loads of different moving parts, isn't there? But if I was a Newcastle United supporter, I'd want to stay at St James's Park. But again, it's whether or not it's going to be feasible.
Yeah, the Euro 2028 thing is really interesting because basically, apparently, there's a rule where any building work would need to be finished a year before the tournament starts.
Right.
So if they want to extend the ground before 2028, they're going to have to get a move on, basically. So we're talking 2.5 years away now. From when they broke ground on the level 7 extension, that was 2 years. The other thing as well is that at the moment, of course, they're building the new fan zone on what used to be the metro station car park, basically, next to St James's Park, and that potentially, I'm not sure. And this is the thing, right? I'm not sure how far this is going to come out, I suppose, in terms of the Gallagher extension, because you've got Strawberry Place right behind there. So there's lots of things to consider. Could you do that in 2 years? And that's, I suppose that's I think if they can do it, they will try and do it before the Euros. I think that would be the aim. Because the other thing to consider is all the time they're not doing that, that's 8,000 people that can't get through the door. And certainly from, again, there's been other talkings where journalists have said that Darren Neils had said, look, you need to get the number right on St James's, and that make sure it's not too big, because if it's too big, you compromise the pricing strategy. because there's not that fear that you can't get in. So they must be confident that they could easily sell out 60,000. If that's the case, it's a lost opportunity for revenue. The one area where the club can spend and it not be restricted by any financial regulation at the moment is infrastructure, which is things like a stadium project. So if they're not going to be able to do it in the next 2.5 years, I think that increases the likelihood that they will look at a move from St James's Park, hopefully in the city centre, hopefully. But again, is Leazes Park an option? I don't know. Is the honest answer. We've tried that before. John Hall wanted to do that, build the San Siro of the North on Leazes Park, and it was
I
rejected.
remember that.
Yeah.
I
Well,
remember
the original plan was a 70,000+ stadium, and then they were essentially the plan originally was to convert St James's into like an arena, like the Newcastle arena that's on the river. But that was kind of like the idea. There was loads of rumours that the rugby was going to go there, but that was never actually finalised. But no, there's a lot of different moving parts on this. But I think, in my opinion, I think they need to get a move on if they want to actually extend. I don't see them waiting until 2029 and then being like, right, we're gonna, or now the 28 euros, right now we can start breaking ground. And then you're talking 2030 before you're gonna get 60,000 people in the ground. Like, I just think 6 years is a long time in football if you're trying to become the biggest club in the world, which is what the PIF have said they want to do. So right, so another thing, this is one you saw, digital tickets. There was a statement that went out from Sunderland. So I was just, you'd raised it, and I'd like to hand that over to you really and give us an overview of what's going on.
Yeah, there's been ongoing issues, hasn't there, with regards to our ticketing system and with regards to just the general running of certain things off the pitch, with regards to online merchandise and how you go about purchasing that. The club shop, which at one stage tended to be closed more than it was open, and I wouldn't mind, but it's at the ground. So so the, it was what was happening was people were given the option with regards to, okay, then you can renew your season ticket. It's all done electronically, and I think they were looking to just phase out any kind of sort of physical card or ticket or whatever. And what they forgot was they forgot about the older generation. I mean, again, another massive boo boo by Sunderland AFC with regards to you know what happened before the FA Cup match. So, which still sticks in the throat a bit. But there you go.
We admit it, Anth, it's pretty fucking funny though, isn't it?
It was
Like, it
kind of
is.
funny, like, to be fair, I would have done the same if it had been at your place. So, do you know what I mean? But yeah. So some of the all. I'm going to be careful what I say because I'm a man of a certain age as well. But some of the more seasoned supporters who've seen maybe a few more seasons than us and experienced a few more seasons, and they've voiced their concerns, saying they feel alienated, they feel a little bit ostracized, they feel like they're not being listened to. And we need to listen to these people. They're at the core of our support group, and if we don't listen to them, we lose them. And I mean, they've been supporters for decades and decades, so it's just not a good look. It's just not a good look. And I mean, I think you mentioned with regards to the new partnership that we've got, and who's it with again? I can't. You'll have to fill us in here.
Fanatics.
That's it, Fanatics. Which I've seen the advertisements before, and it's a big company, and they look pretty like a well-oiled machine. Lots of merchandise and what have you. Now that is where we've struggled in the past with regards to. We haven't been able to keep up with demand. Kits have sold out. And I mean, I'm not going to mention the limited edition Hummel kit because that was only made available in however many numbers. So we need to learn from that. And I used to love going to match with me boy. I mean, he's not a boy anymore. He's like middle-aged man. But printing off the tickets and folding them over and doing the whole sort of barcode thing through through the turnstiles and what have you. I used to love doing that. So, I think some of the older generation are not very savvy when it comes to IT. I don't mean that in an awful way. I get left behind sometimes. It's just so happens I work with computers on a daily basis. So that's the only reason why. So we need to cater for these people. We need to cater for this support group, because if we don't, it's just going to be another PR disaster.
I find, right, so digital tickets, we've had digital tickets as well this year. So we went from we had a physical card. So, I mean, you'll remember, so and actually we've kind of done this as clubs at the same time. So we had physical tickets. So you used to get a paper book for your season ticket, and you'd hand it, and it would say above the turnstile what number match it was, to make
Love
sure you
that.
handed the right ticket over, because it didn't have like which game it was or anything like that. And then it moved away from that, and they said, we're going to give you a season card. So it's like a little credit card, and you're going to use that. And the idea is that, well, I thought the idea was, right, well, this is going to mean that we're going to need less staff at turnstiles. So I'm thinking, right, so it's a cost thing. It's in James's Park. I don't know, like, how there's always someone behind the turnstile. Every turnstile, right? We've got digital tickets now. We've got a season card there, right? So we're not saving any money on labour here, right? From that point of view. So we moved to digital tickets this year. Now, look, it's really easy to download your digital ticket. If you've got an Android phone, you've got two options. You can either do the contactless technology, where you get your phone and you literally physically hold it up like that to the turnstile, and it'll beep and you'll go through. If that's not working, you have an option to change it to a barcode, and you can scan, and then it'll go green, and then you can go through. Or the guy at the turnstile will let you in, and like, I still don't get it. Anyway, my point being is that on iPhones, you don't get that scan option. So I know somebody who's got an iPhone. It's not like, there's a relatively new one. And they can't get into the ground using their digital ticket. It just won't let them in. Like, every single week, and this is a guy who goes home, he goes away. Every single week at St. James's Park, he's like, no, not letting us in. Not letting us in. Can't do anything. And he's having to get let in that way. We've seen massive queues, and I don't know what that's been like at the Same Light with this introduction, but we've seen massive queues trying to get in. And there's lots of kind of stuff on the hoardings about try and get to the match early and whatever else. And people are, right? And the cynic part of me thinks, yeah, of course you want us in early in the ground, because if we go early in the ground, we're more likely to buy a pie, or more likely to buy a pint, or, what have you, spend money in the ground before the game. I've certainly spent more money in the ground this year than I have before, because I've had to get there early, because I'm that scared I'm going to miss kickoff. And then you've got, as you say, your more seasoned fans, your more experienced fans, I suppose, who may not be that familiar with the technology, might struggle with it. So it has been a talking point this year. I just think this is the way that everything's going. I think on the whole, if they can resolve the issue about people having to queue for ages, I don't understand why it takes longer than having a physical season card than scanning in. I just don't get it. I can't understand why that takes longer, and why we end up with ridiculous queues coming out of the ground. And there's some areas of the ground that suffer a hell of a lot more than others. And again, I don't get it. There's a guy I know who, when he goes, he tends to end up in the safe standing area in the strawberry corner. And there's been a couple of times where he's either just got in on time, or he's missed kickoff. And he's done nothing different, or there's been times when he's left slightly earlier than he would before, but he's still been late in. And that just shouldn't be happening.
Nope. We've had the same issue, John, with regards to queues snaking around.
In nicest way, you don't fill your ground either.
No. Well, yeah. So yeah,
no. It wasn't meant as a dig. That was genuine.
For once.
Yeah, for once.
No, you're right. We've experienced the same issues with regards to that, and like you say, not selling out the ground, but still pretty healthy grounds for the championship. The best.
No, I agree. I agree.
but it should be a lot smoother. It should be a lot simpler, like you say, with regards to the whole digital thing. But it's not, is it? It's been proven. So it's interesting to know that you've still got people working on the turnstile, even though obviously you would think with the digital system it would be a lot more fluent, and you wouldn't need more people. But modern technology,
I,
this
th-
is the way
I
we're
think
heading,
it's
like you say.
I think it's the ground. I
I
think
think,
it's because it's still the old turnstiles. Like we keep
yeah.
forgetting St James's Park's been there that long. Like
Hmm.
the Stadium of Light obviously is relatively a much newer stadium. So, but I just think I'm wondering if there's just physically the only way they can get the turnstile to move is that somebody has to like press a button, so they can't link it all together.
Okay.
That's
Hmm.
my only thought. I
Hmm.
think all right, I'm going to ask you this question. Why do you think they brought in digital tickets? What do you think the ultimate reason is why digital ticketing is becoming such an important factor?
Do you know what? To stop, I don't know. I'm not sure actually. With
Okay.
regards to, yeah, I think maybe it's to, I don't know, illegal ticket sales. I mean,
Yeah,
people
so
touts, like obviously, yeah.
I think there's a bit of that. I think there is.
Mhm.
They need to know who's in the ground, and I think
Mhm.
if you've got a
Yeah.
physical ticket, you can pass that to someone.
Hmm.
Whereas if you've got a digital ticket, so we have a transfer system. So if you're a season ticket holder, you can transfer your ticket 10 times over the course of the
Hmm.
season. So obviously, I share a ticket with me, dad, and my brother. So I'll go to like 6 or 7 games or what have you over the course of the season, and every time that happens, Chris will send the ticket over to us through the transfer. Um, and then then they know that I'm in the ground rather than Chris. And then similarly, when Dad goes, and Dad's in the ground instead of him, and
Yeah.
and so on and so forth. So there's an element of they need to know who's in the ground. I think there's definitely an element of resale opportunities. So I think
Hmm.
they are going to look and go at transfer numbers and potentially reduce those over time, and maybe get to a stage where they say, if you're transferring your ticket X amount of times, then do you really need to be a season ticket holder? Because we sell out at the minute, and demand is high, they're in a position where they can then resale those tickets to people, because you can get more ticket like game by game basis than you can over the course of a season ticket. So I think ultimately it comes down to money.
Hmm.
I think that's what it's about. I think the other thing that is really frustrating Newcastle fans, and I'll talk really quickly on this, is resale websites showing tickets
Yeah.
for
Well.
increased amount of money in prime areas. And because there's a ballot system, that's the first thing that gets blamed, because you've got unlimited um, members. There's an unlimited membership for Newcastle. There's over 50,000 members. Um, and because of that, there's I don't know if it's a paranoia, because I don't know if it's happening or not, but there's definitely tickets going up on resale, but there's a paranoia that that's definitely coming from from like members who are balloting. But I'm a member who balloted, and I won 3 tickets this season.
Hmm.
So, and sometimes I only knew a week before the game. So I can't go on a resale website and be like, oh, I've got this ticket on a resale
Hmm.
for however much. Like you haven't got the time to do it. So I think that's a frustration for fans. But because there's a demand to get in, and there's a demand for season tickets, and then because it's difficult to get in through the ballot, people get more annoyed and more angry when they see like those tickets on resale websites. And it just drives that that strength of feeling, and rightly so.
Yep.
No one should be. We've talked about this before. No one should be overpaying for football, um, and that's the issue. But I think ultimately, yeah, it comes down to the club wanting to control that resale process, and get to a point where, you know, for what would normally be a £30 game on a season ticket, that turns into it could turn into a £250 travel package, or it could turn into um, some sort of premium upgrade, or what have you, and the club are able to make more money from it. We are fast running out of time, Anth. So very quickly, what I will say to everybody is, you may have seen our predictions on our Instagram, on our X accounts, and on YouTube already. So if you're interested in what we think the results will be, I will refer you to those posts. And I just want to give a very quick shout out to my nephew, who hopefully be listening to this, Josh Lane, who played in the it was the Year 8 Schools Cup final for Gateshead Stadium today, and their team, Lord Lawson, beat Emmanuel College 2-1 in the final today. I was very lucky to be there to watch that, and congratulations to Josh and all his teammates for that. Very quickly, I had to get that out. I had to make sure I mentioned
No,
him.
well done to Josh and the team. Well done, lads. Excellent.
Yeah,
well done.
Thank you. Very quickly, Sheffield Wednesday, and then hopefully just look forward to next season.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think it's going to be a tough game tomorrow. Obviously, Sheffield Wednesday need a point to survive, I think, isn't it? Yeah. So I know Plymouth are down there. Birmingham could still stay up. I think Sheffield had 50 points, Plymouth 48, Birmingham 47. It's going to be a tough game. You know my prediction, and I just hope that regardless of the results, I don't think there's going to be a major lap of honour, because I don't think there's a hell of a lot to celebrate. But I do believe that the team deserves some sort of recognition, because you know they've tried the best, they've come up short. We've got to try and get them motivated for next season. I know they're allowed to enjoy their time off and what have you, but yeah, whatever squad we're going to have, whatever players we're going to have at the club, we need to back them. So regardless of the result tomorrow, but yeah, how are the lads, and good luck tomorrow.
Absolutely, and yeah, I think big game against Burnley. I think it's a must win for Newcastle. In terms of just trying to well, if we want to qualify for Europe, I think we've got Chelsea, Man United, who Man United got eerily similar fixtures to us, including playing us the last week of the season. So that could be really, really interesting by that point. Chelsea are also in a really good position as well. So I think we need to do what we can, where it's in our hands. If we win our 4 games, we're in Europe. And that's the main thing. We'll finish 6th, and then got to hope Man City win the FA Cup and it's the Europa League. If not, and then we're in the Europa Conference, we'll give that a bloody good go as well. But look, Anth, thanks again for joining me as always. Everybody, thank you for listening. Thanks for watching. If you've liked the video, please like it. Please press the like button to say that you liked it. If you've got feedback for us, please leave that in the comments on YouTube or your provider that you've listened to this on. We've also got the social media channels, which are all at Northeast Divide. And next week, we are going to be doing a show. We are trying to work on something very special, and fingers crossed we'll be in a position to just present that to you as a nice surprise. But if not, we will see you next week. Thank you very much, and goodbye.